The last screw sank into the hickory with a satisfying bite. I ran my hand over the smooth, oiled surface of the bookshelf, feeling the tight joinery and the flawless grain. It was the final piece for the library, a room I had spent 6 months restoring in the old Victorian we called home. For 10 years, every spare moment, every extra dollar, had been poured into this house. It was more than wood and plaster to me. It was the physical manifestation of my love for Chloe, a testament to the life I was building for us. I believed in things that lasted: hardwood, dovetail joints, and marriage. I thought she did too. My name is Mark. I'm 42, and I'm a custom furniture maker and restoration carpenter. It's a quiet trade, one that requires patience and an eye for the soul of a thing. I find peace in bringing old, broken things back to life, in the scent of sawdust and linseed oil. It's a simple life, but an honest one. I thought it was the life Chloe wanted when we bought this beautiful, dilapidated house and promised to fill it with love and laughter. I was wrong. But let me start from the beginning. The house was my anchor, and my workshop in the converted carriage house was my sanctuary. That particular evening, I was finishing the library shelves, wanting to surprise her. It was late, close to 11. A thin layer of fine sawdust covered everything in the shop, including me. I shut off the lights, the quiet hum of the fluorescent tubes dying with a soft click. I walked across the cool brick patio toward the main house, the scent of night-blooming jasmine heavy in the air. I had forgotten my water bottle on the kitchen counter, and my throat was dry. As I stepped into the mudroom, I heard her voice from the living room. It had a lilting, conspiratorial tone she usually reserved for her mother or her sister. I kicked off my dusty boots and moved quietly toward the kitchen, not wanting to interrupt. Her words floated through the open doorway, sharp and clear in the stillness of the house. "I know, Mom. I know. It's just, I look at him and I feel nothing. He's covered in sawdust all the time. He smells like wood stain. He's a good man, I guess, but he's not enough. He's not what I want anymore." I froze, my hand hovering over the faucet. A cold dread, heavy and solid as granite, settled in my stomach. I leaned against the doorframe, hidden in the shadows of the hallway. Her mother's tinny voice was inaudible through the phone, but Chloe's reply was a gut punch. "Julian is different. He has ambition. He wears a suit that costs more than our car. When I'm with him, I feel alive. I feel seen. With Mark, I just feel stuck in this dusty old house. He's obsessed with Julian." The name was vaguely familiar. A finance guy she'd met through one of her friends. I'd dismissed him as another one of the slick, empty suits she sometimes socialized with at charity events I had no interest in attending. My hands clenched into fists. Dust puffed out from between my fingers. Then came the words that shattered everything. The words that would echo in my head for months, becoming the engine of everything that followed. "My birthday is in 3 months, she said, her voice dropping to a near whisper, thick with a venomous sort of longing. "I don't love him anymore. If he vanished before my birthday, I'd be happy. Truly happy. I could finally start my life. I didn't need to hear any more." I turned, silent as a ghost, and walked back out of the house. I didn't put my boots back on. The cold brick of the patio was a dull ache against the soles of my feet, a distant sensation that couldn't touch the roaring void that had just opened inside my chest. I walked back into my workshop and sat on the sturdy workbench I had built with my own 2 hands. The smell of sawdust and oil, the smell she despised, was the only comfort I had. I sat there in the dark for hours, not thinking, not feeling, just letting the reality of her words sink into my bones. She wanted me to vanish. By the time the first hint of gray light touched the eastern sky, the shock had receded. In its place was a cold, crystalline clarity. An emotional confrontation would be useless. She would lie, she would manipulate, she would turn it all around and make it my fault. I knew her playbook. Crying and accusations were her tools of choice. But I worked with different tools. I worked with levels and squares and plans. I dealt in precision and tangible results. I decided, sitting there in the pre-dawn gloom, that I would approach this problem the same way I approached a complex restoration project. I would be methodical. I would be patient. And I would be precise. She wanted me to vanish before her birthday. Very well. I would give her exactly what she wished for. The next morning, I showered, dressed, and made coffee, just like any other day. When Chloe came down, looking fresh and rested, she gave me a brittle smile. "You were up late," she said, pouring herself a cup. "Finishing the shelves?" I replied, my voice even. I looked at her, really looked at her, for the first time in a long time. I saw the expensive handbag she'd bought last week, the designer jeans, the subtle discontent in the corners of her mouth. I wasn't seeing my wife anymore. I was seeing my project. "They're done. You should take a look." "Oh, that's nice, honey," she said, her eyes already on her phone, scrolling through social media. She didn't even glance toward the library. I went to my workshop, closed the heavy door, and pulled out my phone. I didn't call my father or my brother. I called David. David and I had been friends since grade school. While I had gone into the trades, he had gone to law school. He was now a partner at a downtown firm, specializing in contract law and asset litigation. He was logical, ruthless, and the most loyal friend a man could have. He answered on the second ring. "Mark, the 6 in the morning. Is the world ending?" "It might be," I said, my voice flat. "I need your help, Dave. I need a lawyer." I told him everything. I repeated Chloe's words verbatim. I didn't embellish. I didn't get emotional. I just laid out the facts as I knew them. He was silent for a long moment when I finished. I could hear the faint sound of him typing on his keyboard. "Okay," he said finally, his voice all business. "First, do not confront her. Do not say a word. Do not change your behavior in any way. Am I clear? She thinks you're a simple carpenter. Let her keep thinking that. Her arrogance is your greatest asset right now." "I understand," I said. "Second, we need to know the full scope of the situation. I have a guy, a private investigator. He's discreet and he's the best. He'll find out who this Julian character is and what exactly is going on. I'll get him started today. Third, we need to review all your assets. The house, your business, savings, everything. Send me all the paperwork you have." There was a pause. "Mark, how do you want to play this?" he asked, his tone softening slightly. "Do you want to try and save this?" I looked around my workshop, at the tools hanging neatly on the walls, at the stacks of aged lumber waiting to be given new life. I thought of the 10 years I had poured into a foundation of lies. "No," I said. "I want to dismantle it. Cleanly." She made a wish for her birthday. "I'm going to grant it." David was quiet for another moment. "I see," he said. "All right, Mark. Project Vanish is officially underway. I'll be your architect." That conversation was my turning point. The pain was still there, a dull, heavy ache behind my ribs, but it was no longer in control. Logic was. Strategy was. For the next 3 months, I lived a double life. On the surface, I was the same steady, predictable Mark. I went to work. I maintained the house. I made dinner. I listened to Chloe talk about her day, her friends, her plans for a big birthday party. I was a ghost in my own home, my presence so constant and unassuming that she had long ago stopped truly seeing me. Beneath the surface, I was a man executing a meticulous plan. The first report from the private investigator, a man named Harris, came a week later. It was a simple manila envelope David dropped off at my workshop. Inside were photographs. Chloe and Julian, laughing over lunch at a restaurant I couldn't afford. Chloe and Julian, holding hands as they walked through a park. Chloe and Julian, kissing passionately beside his sleek, black Mercedes before she got back into her own car to drive home to me. Seeing the images didn't hurt as much as I thought it would. The phone call had already cauterized the wound. This was just data, evidence. Harris's report detailed Julian's life. Julian Vance, senior vice president at a boutique investment firm. Divorced, no kids. A condo downtown, a membership at an exclusive golf club. He was exactly the upgrade she had described to her mother. He was a man who wore expensive suits. I wore Carhartts. I started my own documentation. I placed a small, voice-activated recorder, a gift from David, under the sofa in the living room. Each night, after Chloe was asleep, I would retrieve it and listen to the day's recordings on headphones in my workshop. I listened to her complain to her mother about my lack of ambition. I listened to her talk to her friends about the brilliant financial advice Julian was giving her. I listened to her flirt with him on the phone, her voice full of a breathless excitement I hadn't heard in years. I saved every recording, labeling them by date and time. Next, I tackled the finances. Chloe had always handled the bills, claiming I was hopeless with that sort of thing. I had trusted her implicitly. Now, I logged into our joint accounts for the first time in years. The picture was grim. She was spending money at an alarming rate. Designer clothes, spa treatments, expensive dinners. And there were regular transfers, thousands of dollars at a time, to an account I didn't recognize. Harris's report confirmed it was a private account in her name only. She was siphoning our savings to fund her new life. I spent a weekend digging through the old file cabinet in my office. I found the paperwork David had asked for. Business incorporation documents, tax returns, bank statements, and most importantly, the deed to the house, or rather, the document that proved who held the deed. This was my ace in the hole, the secret I had almost forgotten I had. When my grandfather passed away, he had left me a significant inheritance, but not directly. He was a shrewd man who had seen a few messy divorces in his time. He had set up an ironclad trust, the Sterling Family Trust, with me as the sole beneficiary. The trust had purchased this house for me, in cash, before I even met Chloe. The property was legally owned by the trust, not by Mark Sterling. Chloe's name was on the utility bills and the property tax assessments, but not on the one document that mattered, the title. I had explained it to her once, years ago, but she had waved it off as boring legal jargon, more interested in paint swatches and kitchen layouts. She had assumed, like she assumed so many things, that my house was our house. I sent a copy of the trust agreement and the deed to David. His email response was a single word, beautiful with David's guidance. I began to build a financial fortress. I opened a new business account under a new corporate entity. I contacted my clients and had them amend their contracts, redirecting all future payments to the new company. I left just enough money trickling into the old business account to maintain the illusion of normalcy. I took my name off the joint savings account, a move that required both our signatures. I told Chloe it was a tax strategy David had recommended to protect us from liability. She signed the form without even reading it, too busy planning her birthday party to care about the details. She saw my actions not as strategic, but as the bumbling financial maneuvers of a simple man trying to play a game he didn't understand. Her condescension was my shield. As the weeks passed, her behavior grew more blatant. She became more critical, more distant. She was trying to build her case for leaving, trying to provoke a fight that would paint me as the villain. "Mark, this faucet is still dripping. I asked you to fix it a week ago," she'd say, her voice sharp with annoyance. "I'll get to it this weekend," I'd reply calmly, not mentioning that I had already replaced the entire fixture in the guest bathroom she never used. "We need to talk about my birthday party," she announced one evening, 2 months out. "I want to do something big this year, proper catered event. Here at the house. My friends are all expecting it." "Whatever you want, Chloe," I said, looking up from the newspaper. Her eyes narrowed. She was expecting a fight about the cost. My easy agreement seemed to unnerve her. "Good," she said, a triumphant note in her voice, "because I've already booked the caterer." And a string quartet, the spending from our joint account escalated dramatically. Deposits for the party, a new dress that cost more than my table saw, a weekend trip to a wine country resort that I later saw in Harris's photos was a romantic getaway with Julian. I watched the balance dwindle, knowing every dollar she spent was another nail in her own coffin. She was so blinded by her sense of superiority, so confident in my ignorance, that she didn't see the trap closing around her. She believed she was taking what was hers. She had no idea she was simply spending her own future severance package. Her mother was her biggest enabler. I heard their conversations on the recorder. "He just agreed to the party, Mom. Didn't even ask how much it would cost," Chloe said one afternoon. He's so clueless. It's almost sad. Don't you feel sad, darling? Her mother's voice chirped back. You deserve this. After all your years of sacrifice, living in that construction zone with a man who has no culture. Julian is going to give you the life you were meant for. Just be patient a little while longer. Sacrifice. The word was a bitter pill. I thought of the calluses on my hands, the long nights spent refinishing floors and plastering walls, the custom cabinetry I built for her kitchen, the garden I tilled and planted for her. My entire life for 10 years had been an act of service to her and this home. And she saw it as a sacrifice. Her sacrifice. 1 month before her birthday, Julian's confidence apparently matched her own. He started coming to the house. I was at the workshop, of course. Harris had installed a small, motion-activated camera overlooking the driveway. The footage was sent directly to a secure cloud server David had set up. I'd watch it at night. Julian's Mercedes pulling up just after I left for a lumberyard run. Him walking in the front door as if he owned the place. They were careless. They were arrogant. They believed I was a simple man who worked with his hands and was too tired or too stupid to notice what was happening right under his nose. The guest list for her party grew. It was a who's who of her new social circle. Bankers, lawyers, society women. Julian would be there, of course. She told me he was a friend who was helping her with some investment ideas. I nodded and said that was nice. The party, she explained, was not just a birthday celebration. It was a networking opportunity, a soft launch for her new life. I want you to make an effort, Mark, she said a week before the event, looking at my work clothes with disdain. Get a new suit. Try to mingle. Don't just stand in a corner talking about wood grain. I'll do my best, I promised. I had already bought a suit. A very good one. David had insisted. Appearance matters in the final act, he'd said. The day of the party arrived. It was a perfect late summer evening. The caterers arrived in the early afternoon, transforming the backyard and patio I had so painstakingly built into a chic, white-tented event space. Waiters in black vests polished glassware. The string quartet tuned their instruments on the lawn. Chloe was in her element, directing everyone with the air of a queen, radiant in a shimmering silver dress. She looked beautiful, and for a fleeting moment, the old ache returned. A ghost of the woman I had loved flickered before my eyes. Then I remembered her voice on the phone, cool and dismissive, wishing me gone, and the feeling vanished, replaced by the cold, hard resolve that had been my constant companion for 3 months. She barely spoke to me all day, too busy with her preparations. When I came out of our bedroom wearing my new, perfectly tailored charcoal suit, she did a double take. Wow, Mark, you clean up nicely, she said, a hint of surprise in her voice. It was not a compliment. It was a judgment, as if she was surprised a simple carpenter could look so presentable. You look stunning, Chloe, I said, and it was true. She looked like the prize she believed she was. The guests began to arrive around 7. I watched them from the doorway of the library, a silent observer in my own home. They were loud, confident people, clutching glasses of champagne and talking about money and vacations. Chloe moved among them, a gracious and charming hostess. Julian arrived, looking smug and proprietary. He kissed Chloe on both cheeks, then shook my hand, his grip limp, his eyes sliding right past me as if I were part of the furniture. Mark, right? Chloe's told me so much about you, he said with a smile that didn't reach his eyes. Love what you've done with the place. Great bones. I'm glad you like it, I said, my voice neutral. For the next hour, I played my part. I mingled. I shook hands. I endured condescending questions about my little woodworking business. I watched Chloe and Julian, who were never far from each other's side. They were holding court, laughing, touching. They were performing for their audience, laying the groundwork for the announcement that was sure to come. The whole party felt like a coronation for them and a public execution for me. They just didn't know I was the one holding the axe. At 9 o'clock, as the sun had fully set and the garden was lit by fairy lights, Chloe tapped a knife against her champagne glass. A hush fell over the crowd. She stood on the steps leading down from the patio, Julian standing just behind her, a supportive hand on her back. She was beaming. This was her moment. "Thank you all so much for coming to celebrate with me," she began, her voice ringing with false emotion. "This year has been one of tremendous change for me, of self-discovery. And as I stand here on the cusp of a new year, I feel it's time to be honest. It's time to embrace my new beginning." The crowd murmured in anticipation. I saw her friends exchange knowing glances. Her mother looked on, dabbing a tear from her eye with a cocktail napkin. This was my cue. I caught David's eye. He was standing near the edge of the patio, dressed as impeccably as I was. With him was a man in a nondescript suit carrying a briefcase. The process server. David gave me a single, almost imperceptible nod. As Chloe took a deep breath, ready to deliver her final, dramatic monologue about leaving me, David and the server stepped forward. They moved through the crowd with quiet purpose. "Chloe Sterling?" the server asked, his voice polite but firm. Chloe looked confused, her speech interrupted. "Yes." The man handed her a thick legal-sized envelope. "You've been served." A wave of confusion rippled through the guests. Chloe stared at the envelope as if it were a snake. Julian's smile faltered. "What is this?" Chloe demanded, her voice rising. "Mark, what is this?" I didn't answer. I just watched her. David stepped up beside the server. He commanded attention without raising his voice. "That," David said, his voice cutting through the silence, "is a petition for divorce, filed on behalf of my client, Mark Sterling. It cites adultery as the primary cause." He paused, letting the words hang in the air. "It also includes a temporary restraining order, preventing you from dissipating any marital assets." Chloe's face went white. She looked from the papers to me, her eyes wide with disbelief. You can't be serious. You're divorcing me? At my own birthday party." "It seemed appropriate," I said, my first words of the confrontation. My voice was calm, almost conversational. Julian stepped forward, puffing out his chest. "Now see here, you can't just come in and disrupt a private party." "Who do you think you are?" he said, directing his anger at David. David turned his cool gaze on him. "I am Mark Sterling's legal counsel, and you are Julian Vance. We have a rather thick file on you, Mr. Vance, including detailed records of the funds Mrs. Sterling has been transferring to you from her husband's accounts. I believe the term for that is misappropriation of marital assets. Perhaps even theft." Julian's face lost all its color. He took an involuntary step back, away from Chloe. Chloe's mother rushed forward. "This is outrageous. Chloe has given this man the best years of her life. She is entitled to half of everything. This house, his business?" "Ah, the house," David said, turning his attention to her. He opened his briefcase and pulled out another document. "I'm afraid there has been a significant misunderstanding. This house is not, and has never been, a marital asset. It is the sole property of the Sterling Family Trust, which purchased it in 2011, a full year before my client even met your daughter. Mrs. Sterling is not an owner. She is a guest. Or rather, she was." He handed another document to the stunned process server, who then handed it to Chloe. "This is a formal notice to vacate the premises. You have 48 hours to remove your personal belongings. After that, you will be considered a trespasser." The silence that followed was absolute. The string quartet had stopped playing. The waiters stood frozen. Every single guest was staring at Chloe, their expressions a mixture of shock and morbid curiosity. Chloe finally found her voice. It was a strangled shriek. "No, no, this is our home. Mark, you built this for us." "I restored this house," I corrected her, my voice still level. "It was mine long before it was ever ours. You just never bothered to listen to the details." "But my money is in this house. The renovations," she stammered, looking around desperately. "Actually," David interjected smoothly, "our forensic accountant has determined that your financial contributions covered approximately the cost of the kitchen appliances and the powder room wallpaper. My client, on the other hand, has invested over $300,000 of his own premarital funds, not to mention 10 years of skilled labor valued conservatively at over $500,000. We have receipts for every bag of nails. It was too much. The carefully constructed facade of her perfect life was not just cracking. It was being pulverized by a sledgehammer of facts. She turned on me, her face contorted with rage and disbelief. You planned this. You spied on me. How could you? You wanted me to vanish, I said simply. You told your mother that if I vanished before your birthday, you'd be happy. I'm just giving you what you wished for. I'm vanishing from your life. And I'm taking my life with me. As a final flourish, David took a small digital recorder from his pocket and pressed play. Chloe's own voice filled the quiet garden, clear and damning. I don't love him anymore. If he vanished before my birthday, I'd be happy. Truly happy. A collective gasp went through the crowd. That was the final blow. Julian didn't even say goodbye. He turned and walked quickly away, disappearing into the darkness, his car roaring to life a moment later. Her friends began to back away, whispering to each other, avoiding her eyes. Her new life was evaporating before it had even begun. Chloe collapsed onto the steps, the divorce papers and eviction notice scattered around her. Her sobs were raw and ugly. Her mother tried to comfort her, but she was staring at me with pure hatred. The party was over. David had arranged for a private security guard, who now stood discreetly by the front gate. The guests, sensing the drama had reached its peak, began to make their exits, offering me awkward, sympathetic glances as they passed. They had come for a celebration and had been treated to a public demolition. I stood there for a long time, watching the wreckage of the life we had built together. I felt no triumph, no joy, just a profound and quiet sense of release. The heavy weight I had been carrying for 3 months was finally gone. I turned without another word and walked back into the library, the room I had just finished. I closed the heavy oak doors, shutting out the sound of her crying. The next morning, the house was quiet. The caterers had cleared everything away, leaving only the indentations of tables on the lawn. I woke early and made coffee. I sat on the front porch, the porch I had built from reclaimed cypress, and watched the sunrise. A little after 10, a moving van pulled up. Chloe and her mother emerged from the guest room where they had spent the night. She wouldn't look at me. Her face was pale and swollen. They loaded her boxes of clothes, shoes, and personal items into the van. They worked in silence, a grim, defeated air hanging over them. As they were about to leave, Chloe finally looked at me. The hatred was gone, replaced by a hollow, pleading look. Mark, was any of it real? I considered the question for a moment. I thought of the early years, the shared dreams, the laughter that used to fill these rooms. I thought it was, I said honestly. But people change. Wishes change, she nodded once, a tear tracing a path through the makeup she hadn't washed off. Then she got in the car with her mother, and they drove away. I watched until the car disappeared down the long gravel driveway. I was alone. I walked back inside, into the living room, felt vast and empty. On a ridiculously ornate, gilded console table she had insisted on buying, a piece that had always offended my craftsman's eye, lay a single silver party streamer. I picked it up, then walked to my workshop. I grabbed a small sledgehammer from the wall. I returned to the living room and, with a single clean swing, I shattered the gilded table. The crack of the wood was sharp and satisfying. It was the first act of reclaiming my space, my life, my aesthetic. I spent the rest of the day cleaning. I packed up her remaining things, the fashion magazines, the scented candles, the knickknacks that had cluttered every surface, and put them in boxes for donation. I opened all the windows, letting a fresh breeze blow through the house, clearing out the last remnants of her perfume and her presence. The house felt lighter, felt like mine again. In the end, the divorce was quick and quiet. With the evidence David had compiled, she had no leverage. She accepted the modest settlement we offered, signed the papers, and disappeared from my life. I heard through the grapevine that she moved into a small apartment with her mother. Julian, of course, was long gone. Her high society friends had dropped her the moment her wealth and status vanished. I didn't seek revenge. I only sought the truth. I built my life on a foundation of honesty and hard work, and when I discovered that foundation was cracked, I didn't patch it over. I dismantled the structure, salvaged what was true, and cleared the ground to build again. You can't build a lasting structure on a lie. Whether it's a house or a life, the foundation has to be solid. It has to be true. And now, for the first time in a long time, mine was.